And I hope people understand what you just said. I hope
They
people
won't,
get
child.
it.
They won't, child.
Okay.
All right, welcome back to another episode of OPM and Beyond, where we discuss, you guessed it, other people's money in order to learn more about ourselves and create generational wealth. I am your host, E. Rains. Let's get right into it because I don't have much time. I made some for you. But I want to get into this interview that Joe Budden and Nicki Minaj did together. I think it was a great interview. I know they've kind of had some ups and downs together, but I'm really glad they're on the page that they're on right now. I think there's a lot of maturity that has happened on both sides moving forward. So in any event, I am excited to kind of delve into one aspect of this interview that they did, which was specific to ownership of influence and what that means for the future and how we can help bolster that for other people who might be underprivileged or be members of underprivileged communities, right? Especially when you're talking about the Black community with their influence on hip hop, with their influence on the world through hip hop, rap, you know, and music just in general. There's multiple genres of music that is true for. So I am excited to kind of discuss that because I think there were some really interesting points that came out of this. Really looking at, do we understand our influence and how do we get to a better place of understanding that, harness it? How do we support others in them speaking up on behalf of the influence that they believe that they've had on different markets, communities, and so forth? And then how do we harness that for the future of generational wealth? So I think there's some really cool things that came out of this. So I want to jump right on into it, honestly. So we'll get into just kind of the first portion of the conversation that got to discussion of ownership of influence, and then get into the why of it all, a few examples, and then we'll just kind of go ahead and go to the wealth portion, the portion that we're really trying to get to here, the generational wealth. So without further ado, let's get into it.
And we take it for granted.
We should let each other in our own communities speak about what we think we did. What we think we did. You know what I'm saying? What we've influenced.
We should own our influence.
Yes!
We should stop licensing our influence places so we could participate in all the different areas that our influence affords.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree.
So yeah, discussing the whole point of owning your influence and not licensing it. I think that's an interesting discussion piece because honestly, what has happened a lot, you know, to certain underprivileged communities, a lot is the selling. Complete selling of ownership of your influence, right? Where 360 deals, other people own everything you do. You don't own your own music. You don't own your own likeness. You don't own nothing. You kind of the face of something, and you pushing product, right? Whereas even, I mean, which is, you know, licensing is a step up from that, you know. But I think that just the main piece of it is understanding when it comes to ownership, how important that is and how important it is to protect it. And in order to do that, you kind of have to understand how big it is, like how important it is and the gravity of not protecting it properly. Right. So you kind of have to understand that. But getting into a little bit of that is the whole why piece, like why. And so Nicki Minaj kind of goes into why she believes it's so important. So let's take a listen. We'll come back.
Why I want you to understand why it matters, Joe. It matters because when I was saying it back then, nobody understood why it mattered, right? But it mattered because we've always had to dim ourselves down. Like, yo, y'all don't think somebody that has so much influence, like setting trends as a female and dominating in this space for so long, should be on the cover of every fashion magazine? People didn't understand why. But then when they started looking back a couple years ago during COVID, and everybody was saying, wait a minute, this person was never represented, and we don't have representation. It's because we shut each other down. The reason why you gotta mention it, y'all, is because when we don't mention it, we are erased from
like
those things.
It didn't happen yet.
They act like it didn't happen. And therefore, they can continue to minimize our influence. And that's what they want.
Okay, so Nicki is really getting to the point of the why, right? Which is that if you don't properly preserve the record and speak up for yourself and have other people speak up on behalf of you and not make you feel guilty for tooting your own horn, in some instances, right? Then you run the risk of not being able to properly preserve the record, meaning not really getting the credit that you deserve for different things. I think at one point they brought up history where, there were a lot of black artists who died poor because a lot of the music that they made were given to, were owned by other, record labels and things, given to whole other groups to sing and to, change around and to perform, and basically just kind of take the creative influences and the gifts that were that they provided for someone else's benefit, other people's whole benefit, right? So when we don't allow each other to speak up about what we did, how we influence different things and how we and support people in that when we know it to be true, we run the risk of allowing large entities and machines to pretty much, rewrite a narrative that may not be accurate and to subsequently snatch the wealth from us for the things that we've created and we've added to different cultures, communities, and markets, right? So that's the important piece of really why it's so important to understand your influence and to own it in a lot of ways, right? So, and then Nicki also kind of goes into an example of, something that happened with, even the manner in which she wears her hair and how, if she was someone else, perhaps that, she would be praised for the different things that she's done in the industry. However, she's gone unnoticed in certain areas for different things that she's contributed, style, culture, and trend wise, right? So let's just get a quick, hear quickly about the hair incident. We'll also kind of go into, Kanye was mentioned in terms of his deal with Apple, and even Lil' Kim was mentioned. So we'll get into that. But first, let's hear about Nicki Minaj's hair. Her hair example.
In 2017, I was in Miami. I had gone to the VMAs, right? Now, at that time, everybody started wearing their hair jet black, part in the middle, So when we was about to go in Paris, I said in Miami, in the room, I was like, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna wear my hair to my feet. Jet black, middle part to my feet. I was like, you know what? Watch everybody start wearing this style in their hair. So, of course, they did, right? But now, if that was a new, fresh, probably white artist, even for something like that, they would have been on the cover of every magazine. You know what I'm saying? With that influence and all that. But not me, because if, like you said, if I say, oh, y'all, remember in 2017 when I started wearing my hair like this, then our own will be like, oh, girl, don't even talk about that. She got to mention that. But it takes us, our community, just by ourselves. When we start speaking, everything changes.
Yeah, so the whole concept of, really speaking out on behalf of those that, we know do have influence, and when we see things that are not quite right or people not getting credit for what they deserve to get credit for, it's kind of, important that if you see these things that you kind of, at the very least don't get in the artist and different people's way when they are kind of protecting or preserving the record, so to speak, or, finding different ways to, express ownership of their influence, right? And I feel kind of personally convicted by this in some ways. I hope that, it becomes more of my conscious thought moving forward. But because I can definitely see myself, when people are kind of doing, things that appear to be highly braggadocious and, kind of, tooting their own horn in in a tasteless kind of way. It kind of, a lot of times it makes you think of things like narcissism and very, not so attractive qualities in people. But it does beg the question, though, in certain instances, if you think a little deeper than just the surface level, like why did they feel like they needed to do that? Like as a person with, who can get 100K followers to just be on your live at any given time, why do they feel the need to speak about this one particular thing or highlight this one thing? It may be because truly and honestly, they feel looked over in a lot of different ways for different things that they have done and contributed that other people freely get access to, right? Freely get, get doors opened regarding, right? When the influence, comes from other places sometimes. So, I think it's a really interesting concept. I think even, even bringing up, like Kanye, for instance, about how, he can, get offered $100 million deal from Apple, but was unsuccessful in getting a meeting with the CEO, which could have proven to be fruitful, in terms of dealing with, billionaires. I'm not sure how many billionaires are being turned down for meetings with CEOs. I don't know, but especially ones that have quite the influence. But I do want to kind of play this quick piece though, just of them discussing Kanye and how, it just kind of being somewhat of an example of how maybe there's not enough respect tied to different people's name when it comes to different requests they have based upon the number of eyeballs that they can command and the command that they have over influence of the public, and how sometimes that's not given the proper credence and credit from a lot of large institutions that these artists and different people may work with.
Like you mentioned Kanye earlier, I thought that one little sentence he said was profound when he said, "Hey, they offered me $100 million for my album exclusively, but I've never met Tim Cook."
We own labels we don't own, play for basketball teams we don't own. The time is now. I got offered $100 million by Larry Jackson to put Donda on Apple, but I ain't never got a meeting with Tim Cook.
Woo! Yeah. You wouldn't meet him because we want the influence. We don't necessarily want to sit down and talk to you and listen to you and think tank and share ideas.
So it's just kind of interesting, right? Be it true or not, I don't know the specifics behind actually what happened with Kanye not actually being able to meet with Apple CEO. Don't know anything about that, but just being that he claimed that, it's one of those things that's very interesting about, thinking about the power and influence that some of these individuals wield, with Kanye, being a billionaire and being worth billions, and not being able to get the eye of certain key people for instance, in the tech industry, when it's known that Kanye largely drives culture in a lot of different ways, from fashion to music and what have you, right? So just very interesting. And one thing I also want to point out too is how I think amazing it was that Nicki brought up Lil' Kim. I think that shows some tremendous growth, just to be able to say, hey, differences aside, even for Lil' Kim, this should have happened for her as well, because we cannot deny her impact and influence. And basically, Nicki Minaj saying that because I'm just having this conversation and discussing influence, I have to start with myself and make sure that I give credit where credit is due. Lil' Kim did the thing. She did the damn thing, right? So, so just briefly, I'll play that clip and then just kind of let her, from her own words, say what Lil' Kim is due as well.
I feel I should have already been on the cover of American Vogue. So should Lil' Kim. If we being all the way 1,000. Mm-hmm. If we being all the way 1,000.
Right, because Lil' Kim is definitely an icon when it comes to rap, when it comes to, being a pioneer as a female artist in rap, right? Her stamp is undeniable. You got the queen of queens, like a Beyonce, who, paying just due Little Kim and the different looks and styles that she's had over time, just kind of bringing some of those back and showing how iconic they were. So just really important to make sure that we give people their just due when they deserve it, right? And that we always allow people to speak up for themselves when it comes to kind of being overlooked, and it's sometimes it's hard to do because we see people as these huge stars, not realizing that they may be in your face on the TV and things, but they may not be getting access to different monies and different licensing deals and different fashion branding deals or different things like that. That really their influence helped to push, but they're not financially benefiting off of. And that's that last piece, right? The last piece of this that I think is so important is to hear from Nicki Minaj's own mouth that, she is a boss in every sense, but her level of bossness has grown over time with her realization of her own influence and what she can do with that in order to create generational wealth. So let's just briefly listen to her discuss like how she's evolved as a business person. Let's take a listen.
I'm a businesswoman in a lot of ways, and in a lot of other ways, I didn't let my businesswoman hat come on in time, right? Like I think it was I'm not blaming anyone. I think it was my job to know all this time you taking to rewrite, right. Spend half of that time on that and go and get your makeup deal and your this and that and the other things, right? Which I'm doing now, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Nicki Minaj. That is a wrap.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much. Thank you for an amazing interview, Joe.
Yeah, I agree. It was an amazing interview. So we just heard Nicki talk about how, she learned over time that part of what she should have been doing as a boss and as a mogul and as someone cultivating their brand and influence, she should have been finding ways to properly monetize that and to maximize that influence to ensure her wealth moving forward for generations to come, right? And I think that's the piece that I think it stands out so much about why it's important to highlight, this portion of the interview, because you see this woman, she's in all respects top notch in her industry, right? Top notch in terms of her capabilities, in terms of cachet and status, in terms of skill set, everything, right? But perhaps more to be wanted when it comes to maximizing off of your personal and professional brand that you have spent years cultivating, that other people eat off of without getting out of the bed in the morning, right? So I think that it's so important to highlight that, and I just think that us understanding the importance of this and supporting one another in this is something that I think we could see some great benefit from as a community moving forward. And I just think we would do well to think more about this in depth as we move forward. So anyway, guys, I think there was a great conversation to be had with this. Love the interview, love the growth that we're seeing with Nicki and with Joe, by the way. And we'll just continue to watch them as they blossom into other things. And as we see the next evolution of, for instance, Nicki Minaj's career, sounds like she got some great stuff that's about to happen. She has her Queen Radio, that's going to be, shooting into its next wave, so to speak, on a different platform. And so we're going to see, how she's able to now put that elevated businesswoman hat on and create generational wealth for herself and her family. And I think we would do well to follow a lot of these notes for our own. With that being said, I think that's it, guys. I appreciate you all for watching another episode of OPM and Beyond. I'm your host, E. Rains, and until next time, I'll holla.
I can never doubt myself, I know better. All of you critics be acting like you know better. Blowing the smoke, but I know when the dust settles that I'm in my element. It's evident that there's levels to the game. All of those dark nights I got then, breaking my back to make it out, got me feeling like rain. I ain't never need your help, I know you wishing me well. A penny for your thoughts, but seeing no change. I snap for the sun like Diddy. The riches got a mad ass son, I'm like Billy. I ain't never switch up, whole team with me. Putting on for my city like OAGZ.